Hello, and thanks for joining us on New School Millionaire. I'm Mary Lyons, the Wealth Woman, and today I'm going to talk to you about no one's favorite topic, budgeting. I think budgeting is one of those things that it's almost a necessary evil, but I really hate the word budget. If you're anything like me, you're thinking in terms of how you maximize your life, not minimize it. And so that word budget in and of itself just feels like, ugh. It's one of those things that just screams deprivation or minimization as opposed to leaning into bigger and better things. But until you get to the point where you have enough passive income to take care of all of your lifestyle desires, budgeting is something that we just have to do. And if you're one of these people that really hates it and doesn't want to use a really in-depth, detailed app in order to manage where every penny is going, like me, then I've got a system that I think will help you out. And one of the beautiful things about this system is that it is going to change your relationship with money, and it will change how you talk about money in your relationship if you're in one. So this is a system that works whether you are single, whether you're married, whether you have combined budgets or not. And feel free to take our version of this and make it into your own. And then if you have suggestions about how you could make this even better, as always, we'd love to hear it, because if we can find ways to improve, we are totally open to that. All right, let's jump right into this. I'm going to share my screen so that you guys can kind of see this little whiteboard I have going here. And I'm going to talk a little bit about the way we approach saving money here at New School Millionaire. This is something that comes from when I actually first got married. I am a total self-labeled control freak. I have managed my own money for a long time. I was successfully saving 20% of my income my first year out of college when I was making $24,000 a year. And so when I think about getting married and then suddenly having to figure out how to manage two people who have totally different blueprints about money, and then figuring out how to do things in a way that both of us could live with it, I can tell you in my household, that was definitely a challenge. And it's one of the things that I hear frequently from our clients and our customers and our students, is that it's a challenge in their life too. In fact, if you look at the statistics, the two leading causes for divorce are infidelity and finances. And while I can't do anything about the first one, I think there are a lot of things we can do to make the conversations about finances that much easier. And I'm going to add one more thing here. We talk a lot about mindset, but I can also tell you that sometimes you just have to trick yourself into doing things that are good for you. Nobody likes to work out. Well, that's not true. I think some people do, but most people really like the results of working out. And so if we can find ways to keep ourselves doing things that are good for us, then we end up in a better situation. So I'm going to start by talking about this mindset when it comes to savings. We've all heard at some point in time that you should pay yourself first. But how do you actually do that when you're a W-2 employee or even as a business owner? Because you start looking at all the taxes and expenses and lifestyle and things that you have. Usually most of us save what's left over. And if you're anything like me, if there is money in your account, you can find something to spend it on, which makes saving really, really difficult in some cases. Now, I'm going to tell you, I shared this a minute ago, that even when I was making a very, very small paycheck, that I was saving a very large percentage of that paycheck. And I am a great saver and have been for my entire life, but that doesn't mean I like the idea of saving. So I want to give you guys some tools. The first thing that you can do is you can completely change the order in which you do the saving. At New School Millionaire, we use a program called Currents, and that program allows you to, first of all, change where your direct deposit from your work goes. So rather than having your direct deposit go directly into the account that is your spending account, or splitting it out so that some of it goes to saving and some of it goes to spending, the very first thing that happens using Currents is that you deposit your money into an account that we're going to call your reservoir. So we're just going to go ahead and draw that out here. And you guys are going to have to forgive me because I'm drawing on a trackpad with my finger. But what we want to start with is this idea of your reservoir. And your paycheck just gets deposited directly into this reservoir. Now, what you can do here is you can set the amount of your paycheck that you would like to save. So if you know you've got, and I'm going to use big round numbers, guys, just in order to make sure that the concept makes sense. If you know that you earn $10,000 and after all your deductions, you've got $6,000 or $7,000 showing up in the account, and you want to save 20% of your gross paycheck, you can just set that so it automatically sits in this reservoir. And the day after your money gets deposited into this account, you can establish a flow that sends whatever you're not saving into your normal checking account. So this reservoir right here, the way it's set up, actually allows you to get up to $3 million into the account, FDIC insured. So that's a cool benefit, although probably you're not going to leave $3 million sitting in that account if you have it, let's be honest. So when you think about what happens, instead of money going directly into the savings and then pushing it, directly into your spending account and then pushing it over to savings, we're having it go directly into the savings first and then pushing money that you can spend into your account. Guys, here's why I love this. If I have to save the money that's left over all month long, I am thinking about what I am not going to spend and what I am not going to purchase and what I am not going to enjoy so that I can put money into savings. But if the money comes out before it ever hits my spending account, I don't have time to miss it. So if you think about what this feels like, if you are set up for automatic contributions into your 401k, you don't even miss the money. If you think about the money that's coming out of your paycheck to taxes, you don't even know to miss it because that's been happening for so long. So even if you're not good at saving, this allows you to automatically hold money back. And then you have one account that's for spending. Now, this reservoir you have control over. So if you hit a hiccup and you need to move money, you can. You can use this as your emergency fund. So there's plenty of control that you have here, but psychologically, from a mindset perspective, which we know is really important, we've already shifted from I save what's left over to I pay myself first, and we don't even have to really think about it. So let's talk about first what happens with the money you are going to spend now. So I'm going to assume that this is a joint account if you're married. It's just your normal account if you're not. This is where all of the bills that you can automate are going to go. Whether that's your mortgage, your student loans, any of those type of things, you're going to automate everything that you can. And that means you need to know how much is going out of that account because you need to make sure what's going in is enough to cover it. And then any of the kind of normal mandatory account expenses come out of this. So I'm just going to put an M right here for mandatory. These are going to be everything from medical expenses, prescriptions, your groceries, the things that you have to have in order to get through your month, right? I don't like to think about those things over much. Once I get them, it's just going to happen without me thinking about it. And then maybe once or twice a year, I'm going to review what I'm spending money on and make sure that I am not accumulating ongoing charges that I shouldn't have. But this is where money goes out for spending. So if you think about that, these again, they're the mandatory things. So what do you do if you're married and you're fighting about what's mandatory? Well, here's the thing. I'm going to highly recommend that you create an automatic deposit into a separate checking account for you and your spouse. If you're single, then you just need to do this for you. This checking account is where we're going to make our discretionary spending, meaning I get to use my discretion. I get to choose what I'm spending the money on. This should happen every Friday. So you figure out essentially what you're going to do, and you're going to pay yourself a weekly allowance. Here's why I think this is so important. If I tell myself I can spend $1,000 this month, again, I'm just making up numbers here, but if I say I can spend $1,000 on, whatever I want, whether it's getting my nails done or buying new workout equipment or whatever it might actually be, if I give myself that money at the beginning of the month, I have to think a lot about how much money I am spending every single week. And if you do this the way I did in my early 20s, I would be real flush for the first week or two of the month, and then I'd be very broke on the last 2 weeks of the month. And so it just took too much brain power for me to think about what I could spend. And putting myself on a weekly allowance where the transfer happens automatically, and I've got a little debit card coming from this account, is I know exactly how much I can spend, and I'm always flush for the weekend. And that's a beautiful thing. And so if you start thinking about that, if you spend it all by Thursday, that's totally fine. You're going to get another check on Friday. And if you don't spend it, it rolls over into the next particular week. Here's why that's so great if you're a couple. I'm the type of spender that spends little bits of money all the time. And that means that over time, I actually spend a lot more money than my husband, but his spending is much more problematic because it's not predictable. So what would happen is I'd have these little bits of money going out, doing all the things that I want to do. And then my husband would show up and he would spend nothing, several $1,000s. Well, in the month that he spent that several $1,000s, it was always a total surprise to me, and it led to a very ugly fight because it blew the budget for that particular month. What we found is when we do this discretionary spending, this is my guilt-free spending money. I can spend all of it and be broke on Wednesday and then get paid on Friday. And for my husband, he can spend nothing. And then as he has a big chunk of money, he can make a larger expenditure for something that's really important to him. And so what happens is both of us retain our autonomy in this situation and control over the funds that we spend on the things that we find to be fulfilling. And it completely eliminated fights about who was spending what. And so this is where you get to decide as a couple. Maybe you decide these amounts are equal, so you're both spending the same amount. Maybe you decide that it's based on income, so it's a percentage of what you actually bring in. Or maybe you do it because one of you just really doesn't care to spend money and the other one has more upkeep, right? If you've got hair, nails, Botox, all the things, it could be that you're more expensive in that regard. This has to be done at a personal level to figure out what works for you and what works for your spouse. But because we've already taken care of the savings, this is guilt-free money for either one of you. And I think that is a very, very beautiful thing. All of the money that is going to go towards building investments, paying for insurance that is building a cash value, all of those things is going to come out of this account. Now, the other thing this does is that psychologically, instead of your savings being a big giant bill that you have to pay every month, it's actually already taken care of here. And now you are just making strategic decisions. This feels a lot better than writing a big check that feels like deprivation and a bill. So all of that is geared towards helping you to continue on the path of making really good decisions. Now, here's a side effect of these allowances, guys, and I think this is pretty cool. It wasn't something that happened intentionally, but if you know you're going to spend a certain amount of money on eating out every week, and let's say you hit that budget in here, and so now you're like, ooh, we can't eat out anymore. If your spouse comes to you and says, hey, I'm going to take you on a date, and they pay for it out of their allowance, it feels like courtship all over again, because now instead of spending joint money where there's no real emotional attachment, your spouse is saying, I'm willing to sacrifice the things that I want in order to take you on a date. So it brings in that element of courtship all over again. And I'll give you another example here that I think is really important because I'm human, you're human, we're all human. I can tell you that one of my love languages is gifts. And I did a terrible job early in my marriage of behaving in a way that would get me more gifts. Now, here's what I mean. My husband would go and buy something for me out of the joint account and then surprise me with it. And I would be angry because if I was going to spend $100, that's not what I would have purchased. So I would say, well, that's not really what I would have chosen, instead of just saying thank you. Well, over time, if that happens enough times, what do you think your husband's going to do? He's going to stop buying you presents. So that's definitely a thing that happened because of our original way of budgeting. When we switched to this, though, and I had money that I could spend guilt-free on whatever I wanted, and my husband bought me a gift from his discretionary account, I appreciated the gift in a totally different way, because even though money is fungible and it's all really coming out of the same budget, Psychologically, I saw that he was making sacrifices in order to do something very nice for me. And it completely changed my appreciation for the gift that he was giving me. And with that, that means it also changed my appreciation for him. I'd love to hear, once you have this implemented, how this changes the dynamics in your relationship. Any feedback you have on this is great. We would love to hear from you, especially the success stories. But if something's not working, we'd love to hear that too, because it gives us a chance to help you figure out where you can tweak the system to do what you really want to do. We'll see you next time. Thanks for joining us.